Let's head out to Detroit, Michigan at Ford Field, where two of the most underrated teams in all of America will face off to win the MAC championship game come Saturday at 12 p.m. on ESPN. Ohio Bobcats take on the Miami Ohio Redhawks. Miami, Ohio, currently favored in this one by 1.5 points. And Brad, before I turn it over to you, I got to give you a couple of stats for this game. This is a very historical matchup for y'all who are new to Break the Huddle and new to college football and are watching the conference championship this game. If you're a fan of either of these teams, you know what this matchup means. This is the Battle of the Bricks rivalry dating back over a century, Brad. This is I believe, from what I read, the 108th year rivalry. And in the 108-year rivalry, it's the first time that these two will meet face-to-face twice in a single season and on neutral ground. This may not be a playoff game, Brad, but I can promise you this game means a lot to these two fan bases. So I'll turn it over to you. With that being said, who comes out on top in the Battle of the Bricks?
Absolutely, Nate. Man, what a great intro. That was a great little history there. I want to, first off, before I get to the game, I love MAC football. It's underrated, and I feel like it's a little bit of an old school conference where they're still gonna run the football. They're gonna play good defense, and
Oh yeah,
that's evident with these two teams. But hats off to the MAC. I mean, just really appreciate your conference, and to all of our MAC fans, thank you guys so much for watching. And MAC football is just fun to me. Yeah, Nate, talking about these two teams, two just very successful teams. Ohio at 9-3, Miami at 8-4. Nate, something that stood out to me about the Redhawks of Miami of Ohio started out the year 1-4, and three of those losses were to Notre Dame, Cincinnati, and Northwestern. So, power four schools, and of course Notre Dame, a powerhouse themselves, and then their only conference loss to Toledo. Toledo's kind of been, the alpha of the MAC, I guess you would say. But Miami of Ohio beat Ohio 30-20 when they played earlier in the year. So a lot of storylines in this one, Nate. And getting to this game, this one simply for me comes down to the defenses. Both teams possess really good defenses. Starting out with the Ohio Bobcats, they do a good job, of course, of getting after the quarterback, and they've got they've got some guys, Walker Burgess at one defensive end, Weaver at the other. These two guys have combined for 13 sacks on the year. Miami as a whole Ohio, the Bobcats as a whole have got 30 team sacks on the year, and then the Miami of Ohio Redhawks, once again a team that does a great job. But Nate, what stood out to me is just the balance they show. They bring the pressure. They force chaos. They've got 29 team sacks, but what really stood out to me is in those 29 team sacks, they've got 11 interceptions. So I think that I'm predicting this is going to be a very low scoring game. And of course, when we see this, it's a lot of times it's which quarterback can end up making that play in the fourth quarter. And we've got an interesting quarterback battle. Navarro for Ohio, almost 2,000 yards on the year, 10 touchdowns, but this really what stands out to me, 10 interceptions. He's turned the ball over some. And then Brett Gabbert, 21 touchdowns, 10 picks. So they both, turn the ball over a little bit, but Brett Gabbert has done a better job of creating some touchdowns there. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Redhawks. I think we're looking at a very low scoring game, but I think they force some timely turnovers, and they come out with the win.
Yeah, Brad, these two teams met up earlier on in the year. Miami, Ohio takes that game 30-20 at home. Despite Ohio committing 2 turnovers, and I shouldn't say despite that, they committed 2 turnovers in that game. And despite running 25 more plays, they still couldn't outgain Miami, Ohio. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. Again, another rematch up this year that we're seeing in a conference championship game. The two key things for me, Brad, number one, Ohio's rushing attack versus Miami's run defense. Ohio's potent ground game led by Anthony Tyus III has been spectacular. over 1,000 yards rushing and 8+ touchdowns on the year. It's going to be a big challenge for Miami Ohio's defensive front. But you look at the Miami of Ohio's defense, right? They're only giving up around 136 rushing yards per game, and they're led by linebacker Miles Bailey, an absolute dog in the box, limiting the run game for multiple teams. 78 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. And then the other thing, Brad, Miami's passing game versus Ohio's secondary. You mentioned Brett Gabbert, younger brother of Blaine Gabbert, and he's looking to exploit Ohio's pass defense. But Ohio's pass defense has been effective. They have been really, really good. It's going to be a fun matchup. Quarterback Brett Gabbert, like you said, just done a phenomenal job. 2,600 plus yards, 21 plus touchdowns. He's turned the ball over a lot, though. 10 interceptions. Then you look at Ohio's defense. They're only giving up 97 yards per game rushing, 207 yards per game passing. Then you look at their defense, led by defensive back Torrey Cox Jr., who has 3 interceptions on the year. I'm going to take the Bobcats in this one. I said it's hard to beat teams twice. This is on a neutral site. It's going to be in a dome, so weather is not going to play a factor. Not that either of these teams would have a problem with playing in the cold. But again, as I mentioned earlier on in the episode, it is really, really hard to beat the same team twice. And look, whoever wins this game is going to secure a favorable bowl game matchup. Both teams are riding high with winning streaks. It's setting up to be a great, great matchup. And I think fans can anticipate a very competitive matchup. These two rivalries, they hate each other. You might even see a couple fights. I know we saw a fight from last week's rivalry week, but I think this one could have a couple fights in it too, Brad. There's a lot at stake in this game, but give me the Ohio Bobcats in an upset. Let us know down in the comments who you think is going to come out on top to win the MAC championship game in Detroit on Saturday afternoon.